Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Cycle Jerks Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Stewart, joined today, as always, with Chris Padavana. Chris, how are you doing?
Good. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah. And today's guest, we have the owner and founder of PNW Components. They manufacture mountain bike components, and Aaron Kerson is joining us today. Aaron, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the
Morning, guys.
podcast.
Yeah, very stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and PNW Components, how long have you been in business?
So we got going in 2015. So we are now in our 10th year, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Really
Wow.
crazy to think
Congrats.
about. In some way, thank you. Yeah, it's in some ways it really does feel like it has been at least 10 years, and in a lot of ways it doesn't at all. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I'm sure you guys feel the same way in a lot of things that you are very passionate about and whatever, like time flies and also creeps by. So it's been a wild 10 years.
Yeah.
And you're still here, so that's good because we
Somehow,
we
man.
were we were just talking about a lot of the fallout in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, there's quite a bit of that going on right now. But no, we've fought through it, and yeah, very happy to be here.
great.
Yeah. Well, I think the inspiration for your product is something that anybody that mountain bikes can relate to, right? It's like
Yeah,
high quality stuff that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And then also it's cool to see all the service items that you
yeah,
offer in case somebody, there's stuff that happens to products and you want to be able to fix it as opposed to just having to completely replace it.
yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in shops. I mean, that's what I did is worked shops whenever I could, starting when I was like whatever the legal age was, like 15 and a half, I think it was early, so you could get started with a permission or permit or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that's all I did, and I raced bikes and been through a lot of that. And I think just like the recurring kind of area that I knew needed improvement was really on the service side. I mean, just seeing how a lot of brands would leave us high and dry at the shop, and then the customer's pissed, and then we're having to pay out of our own pocket, just to make things right for the customer like that. I remember the owners of the shops being not so happy about that, and I had to, work with customers directly on that. So I knew there was a big problem area there. And then later, once I started working in the industry, first at Specialized Bikes as a bike developer, and then at Marin, more of the same, but more on the product management side. I knew that a lot of these factories we were working with made incredible products. Our pricing that we were getting as a bike brand was really, unbelievably low compared to what you would expect. But there still were super high prices out there, and I was that kind of began my journey of like, how do we combine all of these things of really quality service, really quality products, and not having to charge people a ton just to have fun on their bike, and even on a selfish way, I'm always trying to get buddies into riding. And the number one thing is like, hell yeah, let's go. And then, oh, wait, what? I have to spend how much? Like thousands of dollars for something I may or may not be interested in. Like, no, I'm good. So that was always a somewhat selfish motivation in the back of my mind was how do
yeah.
we change this? And obviously we're one very small part of the total equation, but um, yeah, that really was kind of the very beginning of it, and then combining forces with my wife Emily, who does all things marketing, branding, messaging to customers. She, early days doing all of our photography, still to this day doing quite a bit of it. That's really when things took off. Like I'm only one piece of the pie, but combining things, she's really passionate about the same things that got me motivated, and we got off and running.
That's a great combo. I mean, to have
Yeah, yeah.
both of you, with that kind of passion and to have both parts of that. That's great.
No, super fortunate. I mean, I was going through. I don't remember. I was looking for some like older file on my computer, and I found like the stuff from like 2015 that I was making myself to like try to pitch to dealers, and it was in Microsoft Word. It was just like this was like our marketing document. It looked terrible. So that was before she had jumped on. I don't know how far we would have gotten otherwise.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
working with your wife, I know Chris has done that a little bit. Chris used to own a shop in the Bay Area, and his wife would run the back a lot of the back end stuff on the shop, and Chris would be the face of it.
Yeah.
But it's not without its challenges, right? So there's work life, and then there's home life, and then how do you balance the two? Do you guys have a good formula for that, or?
Over the years we figured it out. Yeah, it's definitely very rewarding, very challenging at times. And yeah, the big one is like defining home life and work life, because it's especially early on. Like, and I also admittedly like I think I don't know if took things too seriously is the right word, but like this was all I did. Like I had pretty much fallen off the face of the earth. I completely kind of, disconnected from a lot of my friend relationships and just was obsessed with like getting this thing off the ground. And it was like that for God, yeah, probably the first 6 years,
Yeah.
7 years, something like that. And so that, that takes a toll regardless of whether you're working together. Then you add that in where yeah, the line was very blurred, and if not more sided towards kind of the prioritizing work. So that was something that we've yeah, needed to make a very conscious effort on. And also just, if you don't agree on a like a creative direction or something like that, like who does get final say? Because it's all arbitrary. I mean, let's be honest, like choosing like whether one, there's no right answer necessarily. I mean, you may think there is, but there really, like, there isn't really. So that's been something that we've yeah, kind of worked a formula on over the years, and uh yeah, luckily have really figured out, which was good. Because yeah, I mean, it's hard, especially when the business isn't doing well and you're like, Jesus Christ, why are we doing this? Uh, we've gone
Yeah.
through those times too of just like, oh my God. Um, but you just I think both of us are very tenacious and just kind of keep fighting, and that part's very rewarding for sure.
Yeah.
That's
No,
been
no,
fun.
Yeah.
that's
It's
really
a good,
cool.
it's a good
Yeah,
balance.
I know sometimes I have to cut myself off, when we go out to dinner or something, and we'll start
totally.
talking, and then it'll be like an innocent question, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, I catch myself. I'm like, oh, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Yeah,
Yep.
let's talk about
Yep.
something else, shall we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. No,
yeah,
yeah, we've been there.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
sure.
So,
Yeah. Like
Go ahead,
we
Chris.
would always talk about finance, right? Because she would be the back end. So it's like, what bill do we pay? Who do we pay? And even outside of business, finance is always a hot topic at home anyway.
oh
So
man,
it's just like trying to balance that act was no easy feat.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean that's like when this is your livelihood, your business is your livelihood. It's yeah, obviously very important and very much on top of mind for both of you. And again, like yeah, sure there are sometimes very clearly right answers, and a lot of times there's not, where it's like, well, I think we should probably try this out. And yeah, it's yeah, yeah, definitely all consuming, or it can be all consuming. And that's where you have to kind of draw the line and be like, nope,
Ah,
like we put this here for these hours, and then otherwise we're talking about other stuff.
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
So, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so speaking of Bay Area, so I grew up in the city of Napa, which is
Oh,
down
yeah.
yeah, north of San Francisco. Chris, where was your shop at?
In the East Bay, Castro Valley.
Yeah, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
yeah, quite a bit of family over there. That's awesome.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in yeah, North Bay. And admittedly, like growing up, mountain biking just was not a thing. Like I got started in the late 90s. It was around, but like not in Napa. Like that was just not the thing
Hmm.
to do. We had BMX racing. We had an incredible track.
Hmm.
There's a track now, but the previous one that got torn out, it's now a parking lot, which is pretty sweet. But it was it was a really sick track, a huge scene. They had nationals there, numerous times a year. We had Donnie Robinson in town, who's
Yeah.
Olympian
Nice.
racer. So he brought a lot of kind of clout and just scene around. A lot of kids would want to come race him and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that was cool. At least we had that. But so I think all that to say, like I kind of started to bleed the mountain biking side and BMX side together. And I think that was a really interesting experience, just because, my thing became, dirt jumping, but on a mountain bike. Dual slalom racing was kind of my main focus,
Hmm.
which turned into four cross later. But like there just wasn't, there's a lot of, how do I say, just like a lot of R&D, because that wasn't really a thing. It was like throwing BMX parts on a mountain bike, not a lot of compatibility. We had to do some custom stuff. And also I had no like direction. Like there was no one really to
Right.
follow. I would go to Sea Otter once a year and see what all the like Sean Palmer and Eric Carter and like Kurt Voorhees and all these guys, like see what they're doing to their bikes. And that's like my little glimpse once a year of like, oh, that's how you make like a slalom bike. Cool. And other than that, I was just kind of winging it. So But yeah, I was doing both. I think, mountain biking was very, like, it just was not a cool sport. Like, it was very dorky. All my friends rode BMX bikes and couldn't really figure out why
Yes.
I had a mountain bike in general. And I was a kid, and it was tough to explain. Like, well, it's cool because you can do a lot more on it, but
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough to explain at that point in time. So yeah, that started. I guess I started BMX when I was like 8, um, and then got a mountain bike. Basically, like my friend's older brother had left his God, like a 1995 like rock hopper at my parents' house, and he said I could ride it until it was returned back. And so I started riding, and something clicked. Like, that just was like, oh my God, so much freedom and ability to, get out of the house. And I didn't play many sports growing up. I had super bad asthma and was kind of overweight. So like, I think seeing that like I could apply myself athletically in this other way was really cool. And I always loved, motocross and all these things. So it's sort of just a combination of a lot, all kind of centered on the mountain bike, which is cool. So that was
Yeah.
kind of how I got my start. And then I saw a picture of someone I remember I remember the Iron Horse downhill bike, but it was actually, sorry, it was a Mongoose, but it was actually an Intense, or it was an M1, like
Yes.
labeled. I saw that on the cover of like Mountain Bike Action and was like, holy shit, what is that? Like, I need to figure out what this is. And so then I was like, oh, downhill racing. Holy, like, I got to figure this out. So that immediately became my obsession. So that was like 19, I don't know, probably like 1999, somewhere around then was really when
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, it sounds kind of similar to my whole experience. I remember, working at a shop. I was only 13, but I was BMX, I was just like
Mhm.
a BMX kid. And the when the mountain bikes started happening, like I just always thought it was just so dorky, you know?
Yeah.
It's like these
Mhm.
these goofy bikes, and I don't know, and they're just so big, and what could you do on them? It was just seemed so lame. And then like Sea Otter was really changed things for me, because they had all these fringe events
Yeah.
that you didn't see everywhere else. And they even had dirt jumping. I remember you mentioned Kurt Voorhees, and I remember seeing Kurt Voorhees do a tail whip on a mountain bike.
Yeah. That was insane
And
for
and
that.
it was like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, what just happened? No one I'd never seen anybody, I'd never saw the video, anything. There was nothing like that. And it just happened right in front of me. And I was just like, how's this bike even set up? I just couldn't even believe it. So, yeah, Sea Otter really kind of opened my eyes, but I was doing the same thing. We had Sandhill Ranch. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Hell yeah, I know Sandhill. I used to go there all the time.
Oh, no
Oh, that's
kidding.
awesome, man. Out in Brentwood. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
Sand.
Yeah.
I like that was a bit of a drive, but like as much as actually over the weekend I had my buddies I grew up riding bikes with, and we were talking about that. We used to go to Sandhill as much as we could. Yeah, I love that
Oh, no
place.
kidding.
Yeah, it was
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they'd run four cross out there, you
Yep.
know? Yeah, so yeah, I'd race out there, and then they did cross country out there too. I did a cross country race out there one time.
They
And
did. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that was cool.
but yeah, so it was hard to find those like dual slalom to this day still. Like there's no real dual
No.
slalom races
I think
happening on a
I think
regular
the
basis.
courses are such a pain in the ass to build.
Yeah.
So I remember like they had a national right at Sonoma Raceway at Sears Point Raceway.
Yeah.
They had a national there, I think 1 or 2 years, and they built. I guess it would have been a four cross course, but still, like it's weeks of building, and then the event happens in one day. And
Yeah.
should practice. Let's call it 3 days. So let's say you're building for 2 weeks. You have a 2 or 3 day event, and then you have to tear it all down like within a few days so they can get ready for other events. They're like, yeah, I get it. Like that doesn't make any sense from a business standpoint. Like that's a lot of effort when you could just set up some single track and do a cross country race. Like, a lot more
Yeah.
efficient.
Yeah.
A lot more efficient. But yeah, I remember that the big one was Donner Ski Ranch. That was like where I would go as much as possible. They had like a permanent slalom course there up in Tahoe. And
Oh,
it had
wow.
it was called a Raging at
Wow.
the Ranch was the race series. So every summer,
Wow.
but yeah, they had dual slalom set up and a really, really rowdy, fun downhill course too. So that was kind of, yeah, super lucky. So I'd drive up there and, sleep in the parking lot and do races there and stuff. It was awesome. Super fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So when did you start working in a shop?
Yeah, so I was like 15 and a half. I was always hanging out, wanting a job, but I couldn't. So yeah, 15 and a half was when I was legally able to start working, and was working at we had bicycle tracks in Napa, so I worked there for a bit. That was yeah, very cool store, specialized dealer, and then ended up at Bicycle Madness, which is now the Hub in Napa. So shout
Oh,
out to
okay.
Keith Kimbrough who has the Hub. So they
Yeah.
they were at the time. I think we did Gary Fisher. Uh, they have Giant now. I don't remember if we had Giant at that point. And Trek obviously went along with Gary Fisher, and then
Yeah.
where I spent the most of my time was at Sonoma Valley Cyclery over in Sonoma. My buddy's dad owned that shop, so that was somehow he pulled it off. He had both Specialized, Trek, Santa Cruz. I think those were his core, and then we sold a shitload of Electra. Do you remember the Electra?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, I don't remember what they're called. They called them semi recumbent.
Townie.
The
The
townie. Yeah,
townie, yes.
we sold so many townies. It was insane.
Well, when you think of Sonoma County, I mean,
That's
Yeah.
a townie area for sure.
That's total townie area, man. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
that was wild. So yeah, that was cool. I always worked typically as a mechanic, but it's I think kind of like my interlude into Specialized was just you sell what you know most, and that's what I had always bought the most of.
Yeah.
Because they had a better EP program than Trek offered us. So, simple
Hey,
times,
yeah,
man.
that's right.
Yeah.
But then I really did fall in love with those bikes and knew the most about them. So that was, yeah. Anyway, that kind of kickstarted things there. And also, like, I'd had other brands, and again, going back to like mountain bikes weren't made or really like endorsed at all for any type of like more rowdy riding than cross country. Like I would break frames all the time from dirt jumping.
Yeah.
And Specialized was the only brand that would actually like honor their warranty. Everyone else would be like, what were you doing? Of course, so I was just riding along. But they're like, well, like I remember, well, I won't call it out. But anyway, there was a brand that like would not, they completely left me high and dry as a kid, and I was screwed. I didn't have a bike for months and months and months until I was able to work up and save more. So that was left a sour taste in my mouth. And
Yeah.
Specialized, no problem. There's like, sure, you broke linkage, no problem. Here you go. I'd send it out. So that was really cool. And I think that also helped instill like what I'm doing today of like that's how it should feel, right? Like you shouldn't feel like you have to lie just to get your warranty honored, or you shouldn't have to feel nervous at all. Like it should just be, you bought a product, you should be able to trust the brand and get taken care of. So it seems
Yeah.
pretty simple. Yeah.
Bike manufacturers, take notes.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's like that's so.
Yeah.
I mean, you want people on your brand.
Yeah.
At
Right.
the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to avoid. I mean, if you have an incident like you're describing and you can't get taken care of, I mean, that's a scorched earth scenario. That person's never coming back to your brand, and they'll probably spend a fair amount of time talking about how no one ever should be part of that. You should never support this brand because this is what they did to me. So yeah, it's
Yep.
so important to take care of your customers, but it is
Yeah.
hard because the culture in the I should say the culture in the bike industry, but a lot of time the tendency is to replace rather than to fix.
Yep.
Yeah, we've all been doing this a long time, and just wheels is a classic example, right? Back in the day, we had a whole uh, cabinet devoted to spokes and nipples, and we would pick the hub with the customer and build it all, and if to break a spoke, we'd fix it, but with wheel systems now and different drive components, a lot of times the cassette bodies or maybe a specific spoke is super hard to get, and you end up, yeah. Anyway, it's definitely a lot more complicated now than it had been in the early days. Starting to sound like an old man here.
Hey man, reality's reality, but let's
Yeah.
be real though. Like the common thread though is the freaking lack of compatibility has always been an issue in this industry, and it drives me absolutely crazy because I'm sorry, like there's no reason for it. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like I get like you want to have your proprietary whatever to
Yeah.
set you apart in some way, or like I get that there's increment. Like the one that really drives me crazy is just around the number of bottom brackets and the amount of like rear axles and different thread pitches and various like interfaces around that is freaking insane. And
Yeah.
I get it. It's like, okay, we're trying to get shorter chain stays with a better chain line and okay, I get it. But anyway, I don't know. I just have very short
Uh-huh.
tolerance for it because It's one of those things where you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna build this up or whatever. I got a new crank or whatever. I'm doing something and then oh never mind. No, I have to wait another week because I ordered the wrong bottom bracket. Like T47, like do you know there's an internal bearing version as well as an external like why? Why the fuck do we have that? That's insane. This is so
Right.
stupid. This is so stupid. But
Yeah.
this is what we're dealing with. So anyway, yeah, that was going back to that was it. There was a time I think where it was a much more in a lot of ways, yeah, it felt like a much more boutique type of industry where you could actually fix things. And there was actually like for instance, I remember selling people on like Paul or White Industries because it's like, hey, this thing, like I can rebuild this when it comes time, and it will come time. Like that was before
Yeah.
seals really worked out and bearings would go out much sooner than they used to or than they do now. But it was really cool. And that was a way for us to like really interact with the customer. They were stoked because they're like, wow, like I will notice a difference when this is rebuilt and like it feels nice to have this thing. It's like a complete tear down rebuild.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, it's much more like, we'll just throw it out. Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Get your new wheel set. It's fine.
Well, I
Yeah.
remember when I was, in retail, all these things kind of coincided at once where I got promoted to buyer. We had made the decision to really invest in mountain bikes. This is the early days of mountain bikes. And so we built out this room we invested all this money in titanium stems and all this really cool blingy stuff. And then at the same time, Fisher launched the 1.25 inch headset.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
See, headsets are the other one.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
why are there so many headsets? This is
Yeah,
insane.
exactly. And that was like, it was just all those things converging together. And then I was just like, what? I was
Yep.
just so mad.
Yep.
And it's like, what? Yeah, because headset bearings are a real problem, apparently. It's like,
Yep.
anyway, yeah. But, and then, now we've taken it to this such an extreme level with the bottom brackets and then even cassette drivers, certain,
Yep.
oh my word. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, it
H
gets,
HD microspline, then we've got XD, and then but then was also we have XDR because that makes
yeah.
sense because it's like what 1.6 millimeters different or whatever it is. I don't remember what
Right.
like
Yeah.
why do we need this? But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I just ran into that as also
Yeah.
the XD versus XDR thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after I sold my shop, I started going through all the parts that the company didn't buy from us, like all these DT Swiss end caps. I can't believe I was not aware of how many little end pieces. It's ridiculous. There's like
Hmm.
30 of them. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Right.
Well, dude, imagine like so let's say you're covering warranty for that. Like you have to keep some amount of those in stock kind of well, I mean it'll end up forever just because demand's super low, but like you have to do something. So like these service catalogs for a lot of brands that have been around a long time are unreal. I remember going to specialized like service center and one of their warehouses out in Salt Lake. It was wild how much stuff they have for like different derailleur hangers and
Hmm.
different like linkages and proprietary bearings and weird bolts that they have for suspension linkage. Like it's insane how much stuff you have, right? And that's just from a business standpoint, like that's cash that's sitting there. Like that's never it's just sitting
Right.
there. Like that's
Yeah.
that's a one-time expense. It's just going to be there. And then in terms of like at what point do you pull the plug and not support these things? Like that's a very delicate balance because of course the day you pull the plug, like that one customer will hit you up and they need a new, they need whatever, and you're not going to have it. And then how do you address that conversation? So uh,
Right.
anyway, again, like I get it. I think I lived on that side where you're like encourage as a developer or an engineer or whatever it might be, like you're really encouraged to innovate, innovate, innovate. And I think, well, I don't think I've seen it, like the backside of that of like what does this mean and is it actually worth it from a net result of like to the business to actually make this little incremental change that you have a 9-month window to really promote and make it see if it makes a difference in the market or not. It is totally overlooked and I think ignored in a lot of instances, which
Yeah.
is really interesting to see from this side because when I was on the front end of it, yeah, I just didn't really think about that much. It wasn't it's like, well, no, look how cool this is. um, but then, but then, a
Yeah.
few years later, not so cool.
All
Right.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the big thing right now is this whole Aero integration with the headsets. And so there's trying to establish a standard, all these companies. I mean, nowadays, like, I mean, how do you even navigate through that with all the different even as a manufacturer, all the different options and
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah.
Well, actually, I just ran in that with my road bike is like they switch, yeah, because it's it's all about, gotta hide those cables. Don't want to see
Mm-hmm.
those.
Yeah.
So yeah, they changed something about like the interface to the proprietary top cap that they have because it's kind of like a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
And like they don't make the stem that anyway, there's some issue there where like the angle is different because of the way that the cables route into the front of it, and down into the head tube. And so I made it work, but like there's no like factory approved system anymore, which is crazy. This bike's not,
Right.
it's like a 2022, 23, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so anyway, yeah, it's an example of like that happens very quickly. It's interesting. Sorry, I'm looking at the bike right now, trying to remember exactly what
Yeah.
it was. But yeah, it's pretty bizarre because I ordered the stem from them, but yeah, it doesn't work, and you have to have special spacers that actually aren't compatible with the bike, and crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
When you think about logistics of this stuff, like you're talking about
yeah,
all these small parts that you have to have in perpetuity
yeah,
every time something, it's mind-boggling. I have a retailer in Chico. They used to go by A Main, but now they're calling themselves Performance. They actually bought Performance.
yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that they do is they're really into service parts. So like a Giant, we have these protective down to stick on kind of just a protection piece. It's just a rubber molded piece. And that's like they sell tons of these things
Really?
because
Oh, that's
yeah,
crazy.
people have an interaction, maybe it
Huh.
falls off or something, and then they're just looking for a replacement and just little things like that. But their niche, I mean, they do a lot of different things, but one of their niches is service parts. And because, like, kind of to your point, like I was reading your website, and about having these service parts, and that's how you really gain, a customer is
Totally.
like, you have the thing that'll make them whole again, as opposed to having to replace the whole thing. So they try to do that. They sell Specialized, they sell Giant, they sell some BMX brands or whatnot, but they always try to find all the little service parts from all of their suppliers and just have them on hand. And there's been a couple times where I've been asked where we're out of something, and then I'll get it through Performance and
Crazy.
be able to get the customer going and so
Yeah. It's a good
yeah,
niche. Yeah, they've been selling us our stuff for quite a while, and yeah, I remember them mentioning that was one of their because yeah, most retailers don't want to bother with so many SKUs and having to manage that. And again, it's cash that's sitting there that could be allocated elsewhere, but it's a nice niche, right? Like because
yeah,
no one else is doing it, so it
yeah,
actually makes sense for them because there's not much competition at all. So
right,
yeah, it's really cool having those guys. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So okay. So Sonoma County was it Sonoma County Bikes
Sonoma,
and it?
yeah, Sonoma Valley Cyclery. Yeah,
Okay. And,
that
and
was the
so
old
from
brand.
there, where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so that's when so yeah, so I was not really on like college path. So I was gonna yeah, yeah, basically I was working at bike shops and then also I was working at a Silverado Country Club. It was like this golf resort. And I was the mini bar attendant. So I would drive a golf cart around and go into each of the rooms and count all the items in the mini bar and then have to restock them. Which was just incredibly yeah, it was boring, very
Sounds
boring,
awesome.
very mundane. And like, because there's like I forget, there's like 108 items in each mini bar, so it's just like counting to 108 every time, and then figuring out like, oh, which of these? Yeah, anyway, sucked. So I had this
Yeah.
epiphany of like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Like, I can't do this. This cannot be. I can't do this forever. So got to figure it out. And I went and visited some buddies down who were in Southern California at, I don't know, junior college down there. I think it was in, I don't know, Newport or something like that. And realized like, oh, I gotta figure out how to get here. So kind of pulled things together very, very last minute, but ended up in Tahoe at Sierra Nevada College, which is now University of Nevada, Reno. They just got bought. This
Hmm.
school has gone through many, many different like bankruptcies over the years. And that was part of like I got very lucky because like I didn't take SATs and didn't do any of the things, but I got in with mountain bike racing. they wanted a presence. They're based in Tahoe, and there is a collegiate series
Mhm.
that they wanted to be part of, and no one was there. So they're like, if you can start the mountain bike team, we'll at least let you into the school and waive the SAT requirement, which worked out. So that's how I ended up there. So I went in one semester late, so I started like in January of '04. And yeah, basically got deep into first racing. Like that was my primary focus, and it was kind of cool. I didn't have a huge budget, but I at least was able to travel around and continue racing, which was great, and recruit other students onto the team. So it gave me a very kind of early glimpse into team management, or a little bit of entrepreneurship, I guess, a little bit. But
Mhm.
really, what happened though is I was basically grew up not thinking I was like definitely not a student, and not particularly smart or able to kind of make things happen. But I mainly focused on either the bike riding side of things, or just more the kind of like social aspect of school. But while I was there, I think it took about a year, that really clicked, that like, oh, I just need kind of proper focus. And if it's something I'm really interested in, like, sure, I can go really deep here and actually get good at it. So that was really eye-opening. And, well, fast forwarding to the end of school, I ended up at a angel investment firms, kind of like early venture capital. There was a firm in the town where I was, and so I was interning with them, and I got to go to all the pitches of these entrepreneurs who would come and pitch, asking for money, and kind of observe how they were doing things and read their business plans, and kind of got some mentorship that way. So it was really eye opening. And I realized like that's what I wanted to do. Was I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, but it was more. uh, I think I always knew that was some sort of path. I just didn't, I was young. I couldn't really pull it together. But being in that environment really opened my eyes of like, I got to figure this out, and this is what I want to do with my life. So that was
Awesome.
very
Yeah.
eye-opening. And yeah, I ended up at basically one of the portfolio companies, which was a wind energy company, actually. So that was in like 2008, 2009. Not a great time to enter anything, but at least I had a job. But yeah, it was very eye-opening. It was a startup. It was wild, just the crazy shit that would happen at that place. Like there could be a whole TV show about it, just really poorly managed. Um, it's just like CEO goes on NPR and just lies about the price of the product, says it's going to be $2,000 when it cost us 5,000. I don't know, just made this shit up. So then,
Oh,
so like I'm in sales and I'm like, all right, what do I do with this information? So we were losing money right and left, but interesting product. And why I'm explaining this is that was I got very involved with the product development side, because I was the front line of like, hey, these things are breaking and flying apart, and like the blades are going through people's roofs, and like there's like this electronic brake system that's not working to slow them down, and blah blah, and then communicating that with engineering, and then getting the fixes implemented in the field, all with like no budget at all. So I was traveling around a lot doing this hands on. I remember being down in Palmdale, like Lancaster area, and there was a
Mhm.
windstorm. And when I'm fixing some of these turbines, we have them laid over, and I'm in this big field, and I start noticing like shit that's flying by. And then I start to notice these are black widows that were crawling up the top of the grass, and then they just jump off and they fly in the wind, and that's how they're traveling. And they're everywhere, like my nightmare. Just like, no,
oh
not
shit.
is horrible. Yeah. So that,
Wow.
that was just like, all right, I got to stay focused to figure this out. But they're like, really, I'm not kidding. Like they were everywhere. It was horrible. It's horrible. I was like, fuck this place. This is a
Oh
terrible
my
spot.
gosh.
So it's wild.
Yeah. Well,
Like
that.
roughly, how old were you at this time? I'm trying to
So
get a
yeah,
sense of.
I was like 22, 23.
Okay, all right, so you're still pretty
Um,
young.
yeah, so I was there, yeah, 2008 to 2000, I don't know, 11, I guess. Um, yeah, I left to like early 2011. Yeah, I finally got burned out. Just like I can't do this anymore. It was wild. I remember they had me up on this forklift. So we had to like they have these huge internal like rotating shafts that are like 150 pounds each. 4-inch diameter, just like metal rods basically. And we got a big like defective batch. They're all out of true, and so we had to throw them away. So anyway, we got this scrap metal dumpster, and they have me lifted up on a forklift over this scrap metal thing. Like it's all jagged metal from another job that was there. And I'm throwing these things out. And one got dropped on my foot, broke my foot. And I
Oh,
remember like I went
geez.
to the
Oh,
hospital and they asked if it happened at work. And yeah. So then, I didn't realize how any of this stuff works. So the CFO gets a notice for a workers' comp claim. And he pulls me in. He's like, "Hey, what happened here?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, broke my foot, unfortunately, but I'm here. I didn't take any work off." And he's like, "Yeah, so you need to go tell them that didn't happen, and if you don't, you're fired." He's like, "We can't." He's
What?
like, "We can't afford that." I didn't realize how incredibly illegal that was, and I was terrible. I wanted my job. It was 2009. Like the horrible time. And I didn't realize. Yeah, so he just fully pulled that, and I still, yeah, still remember that very clearly. It's crazy, crazy.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
bold, man.
yeah, really
Jeez.
bold.
Holy
Like
shit.
insane.
Jeez.
Insane. So that was a crazy place. So that was yeah, my first taste of like
What
work.
not to
I
do?
thought that I thought like this is normal. Like this is just what it's like out here. Like, holy shit, time to be an adult. It's wild. So anyway, I left there finally and I was able to get in at specialized, which was not like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy times.
So what'd you do at Specialized when you first came on, and did your role change at all while you were there?
No, so I was there. I came in as a product developer, so I was
Wow.
doing product develop. Yeah, it was. I remember showing up and just being so blown away because they have like industrial designers that you're using like creating clay models of like prototype frames. They're like sanding them, and they have a paint booth. They're doing all this stuff by hand. They have this R&D lab where you can just make within reason whatever you want. You have incredibly talented people that just focus on R&D, and you have these test fixtures. You can borrow whatever S-Works bikes you wanted whenever you wanted to go out and ride. Like it was just yeah, very eye-opening, especially coming from the company I was at before that. So that was pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, I was working on bikes. So the bikes I was responsible for were basically all of the mountain bikes, like entry level bikes that are under like let's say $2,200 at the time, and then all of the stuff that really got me excited was all the P series stuff was all mine. So that was
Yeah, cool.
awesome. So that again was just like, oh my God, I get to do this for a living. Like this is insane. Like that's yeah, again, dirt jumping was my main thing, and being able to
Yeah.
design bikes was so awesome. So that was cool. It was a whirlwind. I wasn't there particularly long. I ended up kind of well, not kind of. I fully burned myself out. Like I went all in. I was working till, like 2 in the morning a lot of times when it was like bill of material season, and just yeah, obliterated myself. And you're traveling a lot. You're in Asia at the factories. You then go down to like South America, and you're doing market visits down there, and then you go to Europe, then you go to like Crankworks to launch a bike, and then you're just gone all the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now you got launched, man. Jeez.
yeah, no, it was full. I mean, my first or second week, I was in Taiwan, and I'd never, I'd
Wow.
never been to factories like that. So that was really cool. I mean, in a lot of ways, you're totally immersed in the bike industry, right? Like you're learning everything.
Yeah.
And my manager, Deacon James, was an incredible mentor. I mean, he just taught me everything he knew just right off the bat. Gave me great guidance, and it was awesome. So that was a really cool kind of head first jump into the bike industry. But I burned myself out and I wanted to be around more, not travel as much. So I started a bike tour business, and I actually got a specialized dealership for that, like a rental dealership in Napa. So I moved back home and started a bike tour business. And like my idea was like, I remember working in a shop and tons of tourists would come in and be like, all right, we want to rent bikes. It's like, cool, we can do that. And then like, well, where should we go? It's like, well, you got to drive 10 miles actually to get to where you want to go to the wineries. And they're like, I don't have a car, so I guess I'm not renting a bike. So my thing was, let's deliver them to where you want to be, and then I'll meet
Hmm.
you at the end of the day and come pick them up. But that quickly, people start drinking. 4 p.m. becomes 6:30 p.m. real quick, and like they're just ghosting you. So I spent a lot of time sitting around. I realized that was probably not for me pretty quickly.
Oh man.
But so anyway, so I played my hand to that for a while, and then I ended up over at Marin Bikes. My very good friend Aaron Abrams, who's their head of product, um, had just started there and began conversations with them for a few months, and then yeah, opportunity popped open and got in there, and that was an interesting time because they had just been sold from the original owner, so there was this whole transition of kind of previous history, previous team, and kind of yeah, it was pretty. Yeah. I don't envy the position that they were in, but I was there for that and really trying to kind of get the brand off the ground again. And I think they've done
Mhm.
an incredible job. Like I think Marin is now like a cool bike brand that has a lot of the same values that we have at PNW actually. Like I think they provide really quality bikes for a good price,
Yeah.
which is cool. So I think I think they really found their way, and I was there for a period of time for that too. which is cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, when you the way that we've talked about your history from the time of school
Yeah.
to working that way, even back in the shop to then school, and then that disaster, solar, and then you could see how uh, the vision for what you bring to the table kind of comes to be, right? You see it
Yeah.
from a big company like Specialized and all the the education you got there, going to Taiwan, getting an understanding of what's happening there,
Yeah.
and then what it takes from a product development cycle to bring a product to market. There's a lot of those elements obviously you're using today. Um,
Yeah.
and then solar serving as just what not to do, right? This
Yeah, man. Pretty
disaster,
much. Yeah,
right?
that was wild. I remember I was just looking through some photos recently, and I had a photo of like this black of a dry erase board, and we were going we were going through how many replacement full replacement wind turbines we needed to give, and then like how many inverters and how many blah blah blah. And it was remember at one point I think we needed to I think we had sold like 2,000 and we needed to replace almost almost half of those.
Oh wow.
So the company went bankrupt. I quit, and I think they went bankrupt like 2 weeks after I left. Which yeah. So anyway, yeah, I learned a lot of lessons of kind of how not to do things,
All right.
or how I mean, I don't want to say they did everything wrong, but um, I think it was cool too. I mean, I was very involved with, I was going with, we went through three CEOs while I was there. But I would go with one of them to like meet with either the venture capital board or go to like investment dinners and all this stuff at super young age, right? So like that was really cool to be immersed in that. And I think that was a very unique startup-y kind of experience, and not a lot of people would have been involved with. So that was really cool. I got to do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always, you do wonder, how to, I don't know, you see these product pitches and stuff on TV, and there's
Shark
always this
Tank.
talk about, yeah, venture capital and all this stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, I've always wondered how that, so you got a real good education on that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of it, to be honest. I
Yeah.
don't think I think like, the words venture capital, like yes, businesses at a fundamental level, like obviously they need cash to survive. You especially need cash to get started.
Hmm.
Um, we were very fortunate, I think, because I saw, well, okay. So basically you need money, and if you get in early, you kind of have to make a lot of compromises, right? Like if you're desperate for cash and you have this huge vision and you're going after something big, you're gonna need a lot of cash, and you have to give up quite a bit of ownership because you don't have anything at that point, right? Like you don't have much traction. You have an idea and you have a team maybe, but you're gonna have to, give away quite a bit of control of the business too. You're probably gonna have to give away a board seat right off the bat, and that makes you that can lead you to make decisions that either are contrary to your vision, or you're spending a lot, or just at a very basic level, you're spending a lot of time preparing information for someone that doesn't have anything to do with like ensuring your day-to-day operations are sound, right? Like you're putting together investor reports every quarter, which take a lot of time. And then you have to deal with their questions. And if things aren't going very well, they start to get very involved. And these are typically, again, like these are generalizations. It's not always how it is, but like these are generally people who don't have business operational experience. They have like finance experience or like an MBA, or they only know the investment side, or they're only focused on cash as opposed to like how to get a brand into the market. And when things start to go sideways, they start to put controls over what you can do. And sure enough, a lot of brands die because of that. So I think seeing that happened, and I lived through it at the company was called Windspire. I think I was super, super wary of getting involved with that. So from day one, I was like, no, we're going to grow at the rate we're going to grow, and we're going to self-fund this thing. Like, because there's this, like, I don't want to deal with that, because I know that we're going to do things differently. Like, for instance, we said no to a lot of opportunities. We still do, but like we don't go through distribution because I think the information loop uh, is slow, right? Like you're not, as a brand, you're not getting direct feedback from the market particularly fast. You're going to get it through, kind of filtered to you over time. Unless you have a really robust outside sales team, and guess what? Super expensive to get that going right off the bat. And I know it can get you a lot of opportunity very quickly, but also you're not telling your brand story directly. You're relying on a distributor who may have 300 other brands. And how do you, as the new guy, get any of their attention when like the bread and
Yeah.
butter story is going to be the larger brands and you're going to be like kind of an afterthought. So like that never really sat well with me. But if we had investors, that wouldn't have been an option. It would have been like, no, we're getting growth ASAP. So you're going to go get a distribution deal.
Hmm.
And then the other side of things too is on OEM, right? Like we took our first major OEM deal just last year with Specialized. But again, if we had investors, that would have been a major priority just because the volume is so insane, right? So like that would have been we would have been a very different company, I guess, right from the start. And I wanted to focus on ensuring that we're getting customers exactly what they're asking for, really listening to them, kind of crawl before we run type of situation, and really get our foundation built strong before we start expanding too quickly. So that was, yeah, that's how we went about it. And I think, I really had confidence from the get-go, like this is how we had to do it. And sure, we've been surpassed by a lot of brands who grew much faster, or maybe jumped in with like a private equity firm after a few years, and they get a lot of cash as a result of that to expand, expand, expand. But as soon as things turn around, again, it's the same scenario as venture capital where finances become the only focus. And as a result, like the brand can kind of deteriorate pretty quickly. So that was something that I wanted to make sure we weren't getting involved with, or did my best to not have happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I
Yeah.
think all of that to say, I think having my eyes open to it and understanding how that world works, I think kind of made me turned off by it in a way. So
Well,
Yeah.
kudos to you for staying, true to your values and kind of what your experience taught you
yeah.
what not to do, because like you said, I think that's super important on your journey to work with people and learn what you don't like and what you do like.
Yeah, I mean, customer support, we see it every day, is typically not viewed as like a primary focus for a lot of brands, and not to say like they're neglecting it. I'm not saying that, but like the level of service is typically pretty controlled in terms of like how much cash you can spend to take care of a customer. Like there's a lot of limits around that and parameters that you have to follow. And for us, it's like we don't want to be a pain in the ass. Like if it costs us $20, $30, $40 to take care of someone, so be it. Like, yeah, that's less money in our pocket, but I don't really care. Because I'd rather have them have a good impression on the brand and go tell their friends about it. And also just feels like the right thing to do, than to nitpick over 20, 30, 40, $50. Like it's just not worth it. Um,
Yeah.
and again, like we're not selling complete bikes. I know that's very different. Like that's thousands of dollars, if you have to give someone a whole bike. So it's components, but still, I still see it to this day with some of the larger brands. We hear nightmares from customers who come to us and like, man, I don't want to deal with that company anymore. I want to buy your stuff. So we still are hearing about it. It's it's interesting. But again, like if we had more financial controls over us, we would have to do things very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like what you said about distributors too, because a lot of times the feedback you get kind of out of the feedback loop. Like it might
Yeah.
get to you eventually, but you're not going to be as responsive as a company. Whereas if you're dealing with everybody firsthand, you know exactly if you got a problem, you're going to know immediately.
Yeah.
Within like a week, it'll be like, oh my God, what's happening here? We got to get this fixed.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was in a distribution channel, it could take months to get back to you, and then you're just exacerbated the issue. So yeah, it's super important to handle that part of the operations, I think, especially when you're going to focus on having these replacement parts and um, knowing where. I'm sure when you're in the product development cycle, you probably identify certain parts, but maybe parts materialize later. Does that ever happen, or do you pretty much nail it when you're in the development cycle?
You're talking about for kind of demand for certain service parts?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's I mean there's stuff that they just like for instance, we bring on a pedal. It's like, okay, we should probably have some axles and some bearings and kind of so we create a rebuild kit as well as have the individual parts. For droppers, it's a bit more complicated because there's so many parts in there. But like if you just think about like, okay, what is happening with a seat post? It's like it's moving up and down. And then there's, wiper seals and bushings that could get contaminated. So like probably should have some of those, right? And then over the years you start to learn like there's common themes between a lot of these products. So I think it just took years to yeah, get some data. And fortunately a lot of the service parts aren't super expensive. So that's something where like we have a few extra, that's fine. So again,
Yeah.
very different from bikes where like frames having a few extra, like, no, that is a big deal. It's actually,
Yeah.
that's very expensive. So,
Yeah.
so we're fortunate that way. And going back to the information loop, I think that's a big part of how we ended up as an industry in the situation we're in today. Is I think that a lot of I mean, you guys were living it firsthand, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of larger brands, especially like the information that things were changing and that demand was changing in the market, I think that information took a while to get back to a lot of the decision makers, I guess, right? Because it's like, let's kind of work backwards, right? Like, if you're a brand selling into distributors, you sell to the distributor then sells to the shop then sells to the customer. If less customers start coming in, it's up to the shop to decide, like, is this just a bad week? Is this a bad, like, few weeks? Do I need to make a decision on this? Oh shit, I actually have a bunch of products sitting here. So then you tell your sales rep, hey, I don't know that we need these, but it seems like things are slowing down or whatever it may be. But the rep may be like, well, dude down the street's still buying, man. I think you're just having an off week. That can kind of muddy waters a bit. And then by the time it gets back to like the sales manager at the distributor who then has to tell the brand, like that could be many, many months. And then you have,
Yeah.
as a brand, you have to decide what to do with this information. And then guess what? Your lead times for bikes are like 18 months sometimes. So then by the time you actually flip the switch, yeah, it's 2 years before you can actually see a change in your inventory buying strategy. So that I think, like for us, I think we experienced a lot of what a lot of brands are going through now. We experienced, end of 2022, 2023. Like that's when we were in a really rough spot with inventory. But we were able to react pretty quickly. And as a result, we survived and were able to blow out product before it was too much of a shit show where everyone was doing it at the same time. So I think we got very lucky in terms of again, just I think our business model kind of lent that information to us much earlier, which was good. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? I could be totally off base on that in terms of
I
how
think,
long it takes.
Yeah.
well, Mike, you probably know better than that, but I just know when, during COVID, like when you were talking about the slowdown, it's like trying to relay that to your sales rep who may or may not be in your store, because of just how things were at the time.
Yep.
But I remember conversations with, guys like Mike or whomever, where they couldn't convince their, the upper management, like, hey, the
Yep.
brakes are on, man. It's like, we got to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to, I mean, obviously bikes are more complicated, like to your point.
Yeah.
But again, it gets back to how you're running your company.
Yeah.
You were able to recognize something much faster than these other brands that have distributors and all this other stuff happening. You're going to be and getting being proactive about that inventory early. That's a huge
Yeah.
win for the company overall. Might have saved the company. I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic, but just being that tapped into it really helped you because fast forward now, what we're talking 2 years later, and companies are still
Yeah.
blowing out inventory, trying to right the ship, and they might have been a year or longer later, just
Yep.
even recognizing the trend. So yeah, I mean, we've all been in this industry a long time, and this completely unprecedented kind of scenario that we found ourselves in coming out of COVID, and there's definitely been winners and losers coming out of COVID.
Totally.
Mostly losers.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I mean, it's it's a rough time. Yeah. I mean, we had a really time. I mean, we almost went under in end of when was that? Like September of 2022. And that was a really crazy time. That was a very surreal kind of learning time. I don't even know about, yeah, I mean, I learned things, but it was really a surreal moment as an entrepreneur of like, I remember sitting in my backyard, kind of coming to terms with like, I don't like this might be over. And it really made me extremely sad. I'm like, shit, we've done all this stuff. It took a few days to kind of figure out like, well, what the fuck are we gonna do? We got to figure this
Yeah.
out. I have employees first and foremost that I do not want to disappoint and screw over. And then we have the number one thing was like I'm seeing these reviews and people talking about us online, and no one has any idea what's going on behind the scenes. And we're like, holy shit, we have like double the inventory we actually need, and we had to pay for that. And now we have no cash. So like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna make payroll? How are we gonna pay our vendors?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with all this product? We're like renting self-storage units just to deal with all the excess inventory we had because it was too much for our place for our warehouse. So I remember sitting and be like, no, I'm not ready to let this go. Like customers want our stuff. They're still talking about it. Like there's still demand. It's sure it's not enough for the amount of product we have, but like that's an externality. That has nothing to do with the actual demand. It's just a mismatch of the supply, right? Uh,
Hmm.
so that was really hard. But I remember, yeah, just sitting there and be like, no, I don't know what we're gonna do, but like I'm not ready to let this thing go. And so we just I don't know, just fought through it. I mean, we reduced expenses dramatically and just kind of went through with a shoestring budget. The owners, we all took major pay cuts just so we didn't have to impact our full-time employees or any of our employees' salaries. We unfortunately we did have to do some layoffs, which was fucking horrible to do.
Yeah.
So that was a rowdy time, but we fought through it and hunkered down and just got really, really, really lean and just really took it back to like our basics in terms of like what products we focus on. We dabbled in apparel and kind of strayed from our core,
Hmm.
which definitely did not help our situation at that time. But just brought it back to the core of just like, okay, no, we need reliable, like strong value products that are mechanical products, not soft goods. So like let's just focus there from a product development standpoint, and then from a marketing standpoint, like we have to be at real lean here, really focus on like our existing email list and anything that we can do in house because like we don't have money to pay videographers or photographers. Like we got to bring it back to the old school days of
Hmm.
doing it all ourselves, and so that's what we did. And yeah, fast forward, we're in a good spot. So it's but that was wild. That was a really, really surreal time of like, wait, is this what this feels like? Is this it? But fortunately not. And we did go out, we got a loan from a private lender who has been super supportive since then. Um, which again was I think kind of serendipitous. It was a referral from one of our board advisors and he hadn't worked with them directly, but had heard of them. And sure enough, those guys are awesome. So they've really helped us a lot too. So yeah, it's been a very wild time for sure. And again, like you just keep selling product and no one has any idea what's going on behind the scenes. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, it was a fight for sure, like through 2022, 2023.
It's such a valuable learning experience, though, going
Yeah.
through times like that because you learn how to cut the fat. We had gone through a similar situation in that 2008-9 recession
Oh God. Yeah.
where, we were just like, had to cut staffing and just, it was back down to grassroots.
Yep.
And, like you said, run it lean, bring it back up. But when I saw this latest crash coming, that's when I told my wife, I was like, I can't do it again.
No, no, no. No, to be honest, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to go through that again either. It's gnarly. It's just as you
Yeah.
know, it's just you wake up every day and you're not super pumped on. You're like, well, another day, here we go. Let's go. More hard decisions to make. Uh,
Right.
yeah, but,
Well,
but but again, like it was a good experience because I learned a lot and moving forward, like we know how to not end up in a situation like that, just to be more reasonable, keep more cash on hand as a for me it was like COVID was going nuts. We were selling through inventory faster than we could get it. So we had a lot of cash. And it's like, well, thinking back to like my, business classes and all these things you're told and books I've read, it's like you have like three choices basically if you have excess cash as a business, right? It's like, do you disperse it and just keep it like as owners? Do you reinvest in growth or do you sit on it? And for me, I was like, fuck it, let's go all in. And like let's let we launched like over 20 products in 1 year. I think in
oh wow.
2021, like we went all in. We're like, the product developer in me went wild. So we expanded our product offerings massively and put all of our cash into that. So, I would now obviously find a balance of probably keep a reserve that's much fatter to help you float through the down times and maybe develop a little bit less. So that was, a very obvious one now, but at the time it seemed like all signs were indicating like we got to expand as quick as possible. But I now know obviously
Yeah.
there's got to be a balance there.
Yeah, we had a similar situation. Like early on in COVID, I remember sitting down with my core staff and just going, there's going to be a flood of inventory, and no one's going to buy bikes. It's going to be service. But we, like you, we just kind of fell into it. It's like, let's just expand. We expanded the store and brought in
Yeah.
other brands. And then, it's hard to not want to take advantage of that wave.
Well, you feel like an idiot, right? You're like, well, there's all this opportunity here, and everyone else is, like, why would I just sit here idle? But yeah, then reality hits very, very quickly. So again, there's a balance, but yeah, it is very difficult. I think like as humans, I think our brains are very wired around scarcity and not getting in that situation. So anytime that we can, I think we're very apt to like falling into chasing after excess or gluttony just because there's something about, I mean, you see it time after time. We all fall into the same trap.
Yeah.
So
Well, and as an entrepreneur, I think you
Yeah.
kind of are always looking for opportunity,
for sure.
whatever it is, you're just
Yeah.
always kind of keeping an eye on what's available. So,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you start to feel like, oh, I'm not being a good entrepreneur if I'm not taking every opportunity available to me. And wow, look at all these opportunities right now. But yeah, you have to, again, you just have to balance that. And I think that comes with experience, comes with maturity as well. I think, yeah, I
right.
learned a ton over those years for sure.
Yeah.
For
Well, we
sure.
saw an opportunity to sell. And so we took that opportunity.
That's good. Good, man.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thanks.
Congrats.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, the silver lining with the hard parts, kind of like what you're saying, is you do have to shrink. You got to really look at everything, and you get a lot more. You just strip everything down and just get down to what do we actually just bare minimum need to make it work.
Yeah.
And then as things start to, if you make it through that patch and things start to improve, you kind of look at things from a different perspective, from a, ROI and
Yeah.
perspective, or a philanthropic perspective, whatever it is. But yeah, you get better, you get stronger, and if you make it through, doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Totally.
those,
And it forced us too to develop some really cool, financial tools also. Like our business partner, Andrew, who heads up all of our operations and finance. He developed, I know this is a weird use of the word, but like very beautiful cash flow projection tools that have saved our ass. So, I mean, everything is forecasted down to the week in terms of for the next year, here's what we've placed orders for. Here's how, well, it's all tied to our forecast of like, we need this much inventory to hit these type of sales numbers at this average gross margin and average product cost. So like every week we're going to need to pay this much. We know kind of a lot of our fixed costs. And so we have a forecast of when things are going to be tough. It's like maybe we need to run a sale to kind of pump up our cash reserves a little bit before this period. And it's worked fantastic. I mean, the last year we hit our budget within like 5%, maybe less. It
Nice.
was even tighter than that. So that was really cool to it also just show that like, yeah, we really, through that period of time, we really got much better at what we did at running a business in general and really understanding the contingencies as well and kind of predicting those. So that's been really cool. So that's helped us. And on the other side, I was freaking out like, holy shit, we have to let go of some people. What does this mean? And how are we going to do more with less? But the team freaking stepped up, man. I'm so fortunate to have everyone that we have because they yeah, rose to the occasion and stepped up. Everyone took on more and actually like the team in general worked much better together after we went kind of through that period of time, and we still have all the same core crew. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome to see.
yeah. When you talk about team, how many team members are there?
So there are 14 of us.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we had grown larger than that. I was building for growth, so we had more roles, but yeah, kind of our core crew right now. Yeah, 14 of us.
Yeah. Great.
Wow. Well, man, the aesthetics of your product has always just been so outstanding. I know as a retailer seeing it, it was just like, it's so damn cool, man. And even now, just kind of looking at all the stuff, is that who does a lot of that design work for you?
So that's Emily, Katie, and Alex. So
Okay.
yeah, they work together. They're the incredible designers, really obviously super creative. And the cool thing with them is like they are helping dictate on the product development side, right? Because the way that we approach things is we try to be pretty holistic, right? It's like, okay, where's the opportunity? Where does it make sense with this brand in particular and our customers? How does this play into retail? Like, how does this merchandise? Like, for instance, I remember I was developing this adapter for a reverb, right? So reverb dropper posts are hydraulic. And at the time, there's a zillion of those because of the OEM spec that they had, but you had no lever options, right? So what we were designing this adapter that would allow you to run a mechanical lever to a hydraulic post. And it's just, it's hidden in the frame. And Emily's like, yeah, so that's really cool. So like, how are we gonna how are we going to advertise this thing online? Like that is so boring looking. It does not lend itself to what it is. It's just this metal little thing. Like how are we going to merchandise this? And how does this play in with our other parts and other products that we make? So that was, that's an early example, but she really plays a role in whatever we're developing needs to merchandise well with our other products, play well with other things that we're doing, have common themes, have plenty of real estate to have like branded patterns and branded graphics on them. And then obviously we embrace colors in a big way. So any opportunity we can to bring in colors to the lineup, we do that. And that also helps on the, on the retail floor, having an array of colors of like grips or handlebars, stems, pedals, whatever it is. Obviously attracts customers and gives a story to tell too of like, choose choose your favorite color here and go from there. And then
Yeah.
this will match this other one perfectly, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, they play a big role and they kill it. I mean, they're extremely talented designers.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And
Well,
do you guys follow our email list? I think that's really like the biggest area that they shine.
Oh,
They send
okay.
out emails weekly. And they yeah, I gotta say, like they absolutely crush it there. That's not to shamelessly plug our email list, but like it is worth subscribing just to kind of see the visuals that they put out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. All these years, I've been in the distribution side of the bike industry, and they always talk about, you know, selling to women, right? It's always been like this thing about color. Women really like certain colors, and color is super more important than to women than it is to men. And it's just like, yeah, I
No.
don't know if I buy that.
No.
Those are the most obsessed kooks when it comes to our personal
Dude.
equipment, whereas a lot of times you could even say like maybe like my wife doesn't care what color grips are on her bike.
No.
She could care less,
No. No.
Meanwhile, the grips, well, it's not quite the right green. It's got to be a little bit lighter green, It's like,
Yeah, that's a
what are we
no-go, dude.
doing here?
You can't have mismatched green. Like I'd rather go black. Like, come
Yeah,
on. Yeah, no, I love
exactly.
that. I love that we tried to pass the bill on to women for that one because it's like, no, we're we're very into colors. Let's be real.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's so funny.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the mentality used to just be shrink it and pink it. Was like the bike industry way of doing things, and that was yeah. I'm glad we're over those days.
Oh man.
Those
Yeah.
were- yeah,
Yeah, no doubt.
yeah.
Well, okay, so has there been anybody that's really been an inspiration to you along the way? I know you mentioned you came from a family of entrepreneurs, but was it a product or was it a person or what?
Hmm.
I don't know. Can you think about your journey and maybe somebody that might have inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had incredible mentors. Yeah, like I was saying, Deacon James was a huge mentor for me. Super inspiring. Love the way. I mean, he's incredibly smart and also like not. I think what was really cool about him is he was doing things his own way. He's very unique personality and not the standard like bike industry person or like business person, right? Like he doesn't carry himself as like a, kind of stodgy business person at all. But he's
Hmm.
also far more talented and creative and much, yeah, just much more on it than really anyone I've come across. So he was huge. But yeah, I mean, prior to that, I think what really inspired me was just like I see now that this wasn't true, but like I viewed entrepreneurship as like this, yeah, like I mean, I have aspects obviously, but I think I viewed it as like, oh, this thing where like you work super hard, you build this thing, and then like, oh, life is so free and you can, which is not that's not really reality for most of us, but it does for me. It's super important to have, um, I think just kind of control over my own destiny. And again, like when things were not going so well, it was still like, okay, well, this is my own thing to deal with. And this still feels more comfortable than it did like working elsewhere where I was worried about like, am I going to get let go or whatever it might, you never know.
Yeah.
That never sat right with me. And I also like I didn't mention, but I did a 2 year stint at Amazon when we were getting PNW off the ground. Um, and it just, yeah, like I didn't have enough visibility into things for me to be really interested in that. Like you have to become a really like an expert in just this really small piece of the overall picture. And quite honestly, you kind of need blind or you're encouraged to kind of have blinders to other aspects of the business. And for me, I just, that drove me crazy. I'm like, I want to understand how this thing works, like let's pull back the layers here. So like I definitely am not a good candidate for like the large corporate thing. And there are people who are extremely talented in that. Like it's just a different skill set. So I think I knew that I really wanted, yeah, full autonomy to really get deep into the details, or have involvement in marketing direction or product or sales, where warehousing, whatever it might be. I think that was huge for me, just to kind of keep my mind stimulated and interested and passionate. But in terms of inspirations, let's see. Um, yeah, I would read books here and there, and I think I would pull from each of them. But I really, I think I don't get so romanticized into like, oh, this person has like the perfect life. I think I've always realized that, like, yeah, sure, there might be aspects that I really admire of various things, but like everyone's different, and it's just I just need to take cues from areas that I like and kind of combine them into my own. I think that was really, yeah. I had a lot of like racers I looked up to, like Sean Palmer was the guy when I was
Yeah.
growing up. Like I remember in elementary school doing like we had to do like a biography report, and everyone did it on like authors or presidents or whatever. I did mine on Sean Palmer, which was different. I thought it was so cool. Like a
Uh,
sixth or seventh grader, but
uh,
yeah. Anyway, but again, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think for me it was more about like the lifestyle of entrepreneurship, and that's really what interested me.
yeah.
And the risk side of it, I remember getting started and quitting my job and going all in, and like it felt totally natural. It's just like, yeah, this makes sense. Which I think for a lot of people that's not necessarily the case. Um,
Yeah.
so that yeah, so I think that was eye-opening of like, okay, this seems like the right path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Well, it's been quite a ride.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally.
So real quick about Palmer. So when you're in sixth and seventh grade and you're writing this article about, or this, whatever, this piece about Sean Palmer,
Yeah.
he's kind of a complex character, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
he definitely was amazing on a bike, but
Yeah.
there was also the
Dark side.
party, the dark side, right?
Yeah.
So, at sixth and seventh grade, are you seeing the dark side, or was it all just like this guy's amazing on the bike and he does this and that and he's, this
Yeah.
cool figure, or was it more like an acknowledgement of, well, there is this darkness too?
I think like the closest I ever saw would like he'd be like pounding beers on the podium, which was like not, that wasn't a thing, right? Because everyone was in like skin suits and like very
Right.
clean lifestyle, and he was showing up like in like like the whatever weird ass suits that he had, like the gold suits and the big top hat, and it was like, oh, this guy's like different, right? Like he's like he doesn't he's a badass. He's doing his own thing, but no, it wasn't until later that I knew that like he had a yeah, he had his challenges for sure. And I think living in Tahoe, that's where he was. You would hear in the bike scene
Oh
a
yeah.
lot more detail about that. So I learned about that later. But no, I mean, growing up, it was just like this guy's beaten to his own drum, and he's wearing jeans while racing. Like that's cool, and he like hand wrote Specialized. As a kid, I thought that was really cool.
That was
So,
cool. Yeah.
so yeah, but no, there was not the no, I didn't know the full picture for sure.
So and then later you work at Specialized and you're in charge of the Palmer platform essentially, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever work with him on that, or was it already kind of baked before you came on and then started working with the
Well, so
details?
so Deacon actually came up with that whole line. So P series was like a nod to, man, I'm trying to remember. It had something to do with, I think, like it was these magazines in the UK, and it would be like P3, maybe it was page 3, something like that. I think it had to do with like um pinup model things, and it was like a known thing.
Oh,
So I think that's where the name came from originally. And then it became P series. So yeah, Deacon was the I think he was the one who led that entire kind of creation of that category within Specialized, because he and Alain Lanous, who was a head designer there for a long time, those guys were like hardcore into BMX and dirt jumping. And I think during the day they would work on bikes they necessarily weren't so passionate about, but then they got their outlet through the P series side, which they could kind of express themselves through, which was cool.
got
But
it.
no, Palmer was long gone by that point. We did have, and Martin Soderstrom, who helped us a lot with product development, Darren Bearcloth, who helped us quite a bit, and then we had Mike Montgomery. I don't know
Yeah,
if you guys remember him, but yeah, he was helping
yeah,
us a bit with feedback on frames, and a lot of grassroots riders too. But those were the main guys I was working with, those three.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, in retail, I never worked for a specialized retailer, but the P series kind of came out kind of on the heels of Palmer's.
Yeah.
I always just thought it was a Palmer. I always thought it was a Palmer thing
Yeah. Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
would be the bike that he would be most interested in, most likely.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting to find out it's some UK pinup deal.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. Yeah, I don't know. Sure it's
Yeah.
out there on Google, but yeah, that's how it was explained to me. It was like, well, no, it actually had nothing to do with what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so and did you work with the writers, like you said, Montgomery and Soderstrom and Claw? Were you working with them pretty closely, or was it more just
Yeah, I mean, it comes in spurts, right? So it's like, hey, like let's say, we're really obsessed with like bottom bracket heights and head tube angles and trying to figure out where that's going to land because there's a lot of contradictions, right? So like if you really wanted to carve a corner, you want a lower center of gravity. So like we were balancing, so like at the time, so 2011, 2012, 2013. Pump track was really starting to build up, and a lot of communities were starting to get pump tracks and blah blah blah. But like the way you design a bike for that is very different than what you're going to design for slope style, because or skate park for that matter, which a lot of these guys were doing. They actually wanted a little bit higher bottom bracket so they could really pop and spin, especially on like a quarter pipe, something like that. But then those bikes are a little bit, I guess you could say they have a higher center of gravity, a little bit more top heavy, not so great for like the average rider. So we would make them custom bikes, totally custom geos. I remember Martin had the most extreme where we had to like completely suspension correct the entire frame for what he would ride. Because he always rode like 130 millimeter travel fork, and everyone else was riding like 80 millimeter forks.
yeah.
Because he's so tall, he needed a much higher front end and whatever. So we'd have to design around that. So he always got custom bikes. Claw was Claw was always like, I don't give a shit, just give me whatever. So he would just ride. I remember. Okay, so we came out with this bike called the P Slope. It was a full
I
suspension
remember.
slope style bike, right? So very proud of that bike. And so we got 4 initial prototypes. We fly them up to he was putting on an event called the Bear Claw Invitational up on Vancouver Island, slope
Yeah.
style event. So we get him the very first frame. I hadn't even seen him yet. Went straight from Taiwan straight to him. And so he builds this thing up. We get to the event. He had already lake jumped it. Like the night before, he was with all his because he has all his buddies in town for this event and they're all drinking and he freaking jumps it into the water. We're like, dude, what are you doing? And then the next day at the event, I hear this like clanking, like someone's using a hammer and I'm not really thinking much of it. And then someone from the media, like from I don't remember if it was Pink Bike or NSMB, someone's like, "Hey, dude, what's going on over here? What's causing
Yeah.
you guys to do a frame?" He's got a hammer and a file, and he's
Uh-oh.
filing down the frame. I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! What are you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, man, this frame's in front of in front of everyone. Yeah, this thing's fucked." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, it's clunking. The shock's hitting the frame." And I'm like, "No, the shock is fixed at this point that you're talking about. There's no way it could contact. It doesn't move." He's like, "No, dude, listen." And so I'm pushing it, and I like undo the lockout of his shock, and sure enough, the sound goes away. I'm like, did I think your shock's blown? And he was like super embarrassed. And he just kind of like storms off. But I was just,
Oh
what are you
man.
doing, dude? You're like in front of the media, they're taking photos of him, like taking a hammer to this brand new prototype frame that we hadn't even
Oh
released yet.
shit.
So,
Oh my gosh.
so anyway, there's yeah. Anyway, it was a pretty it's a funny time for sure.
Well, I guess that's the good and the bad of his mindset, right? I was going to say, oh man, that's cool. Like he's just got this rider, it's not a prima donna, doesn't
Yeah,
want, he'll ride whatever. I think that's a really good attribute. But
yeah.
then the flip side is he's got a hammer and a, and a file in front of everybody.
Yeah, and the bike showed up rusty. Like the chain was fully rusty and like bottom brackets creaking. And he didn't care. Like he's there to ride. He didn't give a shit about making sure things are pristine. But from, obviously from my standpoint, it was like, dude, this thing, we're releasing this next week at Crankworks. It needs to be in better shape. not have,
Yeah.
not have like file marks on it. So anyway, yeah, it was kind of a funny time. But no, we work with those guys quite a bit. Again, like a lot of the feedback that they gave, just it was so like nuanced and so niche.
Yeah.
It didn't really translate to the market, so I had to find a balance
Hmm.
for how much of their feedback we could actually use, and then when to go full custom and when not to.
Yeah. Do you have any riders that you work with? I mean, in a similar vein at PNW?
Yeah, I mean, for us, Cody Kelly is awesome
Oh,
with
cool.
feedback. Mark Matthews as well up on Vancouver Island up in Canada. They give us quite a bit of feedback, and then we're super lucky. We have a huge network of either employees, obviously, that are very very skilled with um, giving feedback. I mean, I'm sure you guys see it as well. Like it's very simple, very common to get feedback where it's like, "Hey, how are things?" "Oh, it's great. This thing's
Yeah,
rad."
right.
I can't do anything with that information, right? So like it's like no 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 like what sucks about it or what are you really liking? And I need it to be like pretty specific.
Yeah,
So finding people who can really explain things in those type of terms takes a while. But yeah, over the years, like we have employees as well as just kind of grassroots folks who are riding a ton. And we may have like a pedal person and then we have like a handlebar person, like maybe their experience or feedback is stronger in those areas, or they don't have sponsorships in those areas of the bike, so we can still get feedback. There's a bit of that we have to play as well.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that part's great. I think the biggest thing is just the volume of riding that they're able, if you're a pro rider, that's your job. They're
yeah,
going to be out obviously much more than we're able to sitting at a desk. So that helps tremendously. And then again, kind of get guiding feedback of like, what are we looking for exactly? Um,
yeah.
some folks are naturally better at it than others.
So,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the first product? Was it the seat post?
Yeah, so first product, first product was a externally routed seat post where like the cable was at the head of the post. So like the cable moved every time you actuated. So how that came about, so I was at Specialized. We needed a dropper post that wasn't the command post because it was just it was too expensive to spec on my bikes. Like it just
Hmm.
made no sense. So we started a project with our office in Taiwan of like we need to create a lower price dropper that's reliable and all the things. And so that was kind of my first foray into dropper posts, was learning all about that and kicking that project off in Taiwan, finding a manufacturer and all of that. So I knew that we had this product, and basically Specialized had an exclusive on that exact product for I think 1 year, maybe 2 years, because they helped lead the development. But after that, I knew it was open, and I don't think anyone else knew this. So this was kind of just knowledge I had. And I remember when I was wanting to start a brand, um, I wanted to start with something technical because I had this gut feeling that like if we just go out with like grips or handlebars, something pretty low, kind of low hanging fruit, low barrier to entry, that I think we're going to really struggle because it's too easy to do those type of products, and then it becomes more like a clothing brand where then it's all about really fancy marketing and sponsorships and all these things. So how do we set ourselves apart, and how do we establish that we're more than, we're a more technical brand?
Yeah.
So that's what we started with. And basically, I hit up that factory. Emily and I, those, yeah, we were, her dad was going through, he had brain cancer. So we're up here taking care of him. And
Oh, wow.
we were living in a motel. We didn't even have a place to live yet. And so I remember, I think I needed a distraction for sure, and something I had kind of some control over. That was part of, I think, why I chose then to get started with the company. And I remember like sitting on bed on Skype, blowing up my former contact at this factory, and like he was just ignoring me. And so I finally just called the front desk, and they pick up in Mandarin, and I'm like, "Hi," uh, you know, saying his name, asking for them. And so I finally got
Yeah.
connected to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I know I've been emailing you, and I get it, but like, I'm starting this company, and I want to start." And he's like, "Yeah, no, yeah, we don't really do that." I was like, no, 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 no. No, like I really need to do this. And like, I'm telling you, like, there's an opportunity here. This is really unique. I want to do it. And so over a few weeks, I just kept just bugging the shit out of him. He finally was like, fine, here's the MOQ, here's the minimum order quantity. Thinking, I think maybe that would deter, but basically I think it was like $10,000 a product. And we happened to have we had like $12,000 in savings. And again, Emily being very I think that was also a unique aspect, is like having a partner who was on this journey with you. Like, we spent what we had, and that's what we put it into. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, worst case scenario, we can blow this shit out on, I don't know, eBay or Amazon or something. Like, let's give it a shot.
Hmm.
And it was started as like, let's just yeah, see where this thing goes and just put this stuff up online. And then I was like, well, what if we created a brand around it that actually had like a cool like visual identity and like, well, what would this be? And it started to really grow around kind of this initial product because then it was real. It was like, shit, we're buying this stuff. It's coming in 3 months, 2 months. So
Yeah.
that's how it started. And they were just straight up, it was the same product that Specialized had been putting on bikes because I didn't have any money to pay for engineers. So that was how we got started in the early days. And then use that cash to buy more. And then we started to expand into other product categories. Then we had money to actually pay for engineering and things kind of snowballed from there. But we started basically a little digital consultancy where I was like consulting brands on how to sell on Amazon. She was doing graphic design and photos. And that's how we paid the bills for the first few years. We were doing that on the side
Wow.
to get PNW going. So it didn't have money to pay us. We just kept reinvesting. So it was, yeah, crazy,
Yeah.
busy
The
times.
C post. I remember I first heard about it. I had a buddy that had a 27.2 bike and he wanted a dropper post.
Yep.
And he just showed up with it on a ride or something. And I remember talking to him about it and it looked really nice and was like
Yeah.
really inexpensive. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, I embraced the 27.2 thing right off the bat. I had a misalignment of where it made sense at the time. I was thinking like, ooh, cyclocross, like that makes sense, but it doesn't. You wouldn't really want to do that. But
Yeah.
still, people fortunately helped me out and kind of filled in the blanks and started installing them where it made sense. Even though I was a little bit off base on that, but yeah, the 27.2 thing, it's still yet to really become a mainstream thing, but it's starting to catch on, especially with gravel really blurring the lines between mountain biking and road at this point. You're seeing a lot more droppers there,
Hmm.
as well as it makes sense even in weird applications like adventure bikes as well as commute and e-bikes.
Yeah,
If you want to roll up to a stop sign and put both feet on the ground, so you have this big ass heavy bike and maybe you're not super comfortable on the bike, it's nice to have a dropper just be able to do that and then pop it up when you get going again.
for
So we're seeing
sure.
some other applications these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, listen,
Yeah.
we should probably wrap it up. You've been very
Sure.
generous with your time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on. And if how do people follow along? You mentioned the email. Is that maybe visit the website and get on the email list?
Yeah, if you just scroll to the bottom and sign up on our email list, and it's not it like I probably unsubscribe if it's too much, but we really go out of our way to not just do spammy bullshit emails. Like they're we include like recipes sometimes. We're always trying to do something kind of fun and different, just so it's actually engaging and interesting.
Oh, cool.
So that I think is our biggest mouthpiece at this point. Obviously, we have Instagram and Facebook, but we're most active through our email these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, pnwcomponents.com. Just scroll to the bottom and there's a little email sign up link there.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
All right, Aaron.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, man. It's been
Guys, thank you.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
been great having you on and learning about your journey in the bike business. And yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely keep an eye on for anything that might be coming from PNW Components in the future.
A lot's
Yeah,
coming.
very,
Yeah.
very
Appreciate it,
cool.
guys.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. And
And thanks.
okay, take care.
Thanks, guys.